Episode 22. What you can do to stop time from flying by you.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
You know, that rant from yesterday just felt fucking good. The Care Bear Society is something, I don't know, for some reason I just can't get used to it, and I don't see how we're going to make those great achievements that we did in the past 200 years if, a society goes down the road of making adventures interesting. I think it's a society worth being destroyed, and that's left as being the last and final adventure of such a society. That being said, folks, we're all getting older, and in times of COVID, my saying is we're all going to die, whether it is of COVID or without. I think that's the only certainty in life, as I stated yesterday. But there's a phenomenon which I think every one of us has noticed, in that the time until you're 18 or, whatever the age of maturity is in where you are, is just so fucking long, and then you are 18 and all of a sudden you're allowed to do pretty much everything. And then come all of the rules and regulations and obligations and whatnot, and you're like, oh fuck, I want to go back. Because with those rules and regulations, and as you get older, it appears that time is going much faster. Days pass much faster, years, months become years immediately, and it's like, wow, shit, I gotta buy Christmas presents again. We just had Santa Claus here yesterday. That's the perception that you get. And the older you get, the worse this phenomenon gets. Now, I'm not going to, or my intention is not to, set you up with negative thoughts, because that's not the reason. It's just a scientifically more or less validly explained phenomenon. And here is why time starts to fly, presumably, as you get older. Now, a lot of the shit you do during the day is repetitive. You have your routine, you have your wake-up routine, you have your go-to-work routine, you have your routine at work, you have your routine at lunch. Friday is pizza day in the canteen, or whatever. On the weekends, you do your hobbies with your friends that you've had for probably a decade or two or three or four, depending on how old you are. And these routines are the shit that gets you going. Because if you look back at your younger self, there was excitement. There was a lot of new stuff happening to you. And you tried out a lot of new stuff. Every single day was exciting and new, and you learned stuff, and all of the stuff that you learned very soon became a routine. You're used to it. You can do it. You've done it 100 times. What could possibly go wrong? Yada, 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 the whole ordeal. For me, this didn't start until my mid-30s, when I quit work and kind of settled down. When every day wasn't, where on the planet am I going to be today? I have to catch my flight, which is different from the one I caught last week. And I'm going to a different place altogether. And I'm on a new airline, and I meet new people constantly. I exchange experiences and thoughts with them. my thoughts get enriched, my mindset gets improved, and so on and so forth. So for me, this started to happen in my mid 30s when all of a sudden came this, I don't know, train hitting a wall phenomenon. When I went from doing several projects around the globe pretty much at the same time, spending shitloads of time on airline flights, on other flights, in the hotels, constantly changing hotels. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom, you're in the house, stay there. That was like a totally freaking new experience. But it came with a few perks in that it's a very large house, it's a very old house, and there's tons of stuff to do. And you always have to find new ways to do them because you're building new stuff, you're repairing stuff, you're maintaining stuff, and all of that, inevitably leads to you constantly learning and figuring out how to do things better and improving and that whole ordeal. So it's about breaking the routine that's gonna decelerate your life. Because with picking up new stuff, you have to learn again. You have to learn from experiences that you make. You have to figure out, like I said, how to do things more efficiently, how to do things better, and how you can improve the result, how you can decrease the time till you get to the result. And let me give you a shitty example. I mentioned last Friday in the exercise maximizing personal productivity, that thing with listening to podcasts while you're doing stuff. And we live pretty much in the forest, which means that at the end of the year, towards autumn, and in autumn, and even into winter, we have tons of leaves falling from trees into our yard, which needs to be taken care of and gotten rid of, because if you leave it there, it just messes up the entire garden, blah, blah. So first year I took, a rake, and took care of the leaves that way. Took me ages. The year after that, I became clever. I bought a, leaf blower thingamajigger, electricity powered, and blew all the leaves into corners, then put them on the tractor, drove them into the woods, and that was it. Still took shitloads of time. Then I took the leaf blower and blew everything down the hill. And when everything was down at the bottom of the hill, I would take the tractor, run over it with a lawnmower device, put everything into the trailer, drive it into the woods, and boom, I was finished in less than an hour. So you improve, but the journey of getting to that optimum result, and I'm not saying that my result is optimal, but getting there challenges you to rethink what you're doing constantly. And I know for a lot of you, this isn't new. You've got your house. I hope you're listening to podcasts when you're doing shitty chores now to educate yourself. That being, I'll get into that later. But it's about breaking the routines in your life that decelerates your life. I think that's the point we have to take away from this, because, like I said, the routines are, disregard the last point. Sorry. So how can we break the routines in your life? And one of the most important things, and one of the most obvious things, is to take up new hobbies. Now, whatever it is that fancies you, no idea. I don't know. Try painting. I don't know. Do handyman work. Do volunteer work at your local fire department. Interesting place to learn shit. I went into that in another episode. And by that, it's the purging of routines that will actually then lead to you experiencing life slower and a bit decelerated. I know it's a hard thing to request because your routines are comfortable, but it comes with a downside that you actually need to get used to the fact that your life is going to accelerate even more because everything else you're, doing is going to be routine at some point. And so picking up new hobbies regularly is one of the things that will help you out there. That being said, another interesting thing you might consider, and I know this is a wild one, but take a new job. Learn by getting a new job altogether and break out your entire daily routine. Kill it at the root. And then, if you have a new job, and I'm not talking about changing the company, doing the same shit you did, educate yourself further, because the more stuff you learn, the more exciting your life gets. And that was just my experience, from the different lives I mentioned in the Q4L episode a week or two ago on Wednesday, where I said, I think the most interesting bit in my life, or in the lives I have lived so far, is that with every new life I started, I learned so incredibly much. And last Thursday, I went in the episode called Passion. I went into being passionate about what you're doing. And I think that's another thing which might lead you to contemplate to change your job, because I know that a lot of you are unsatisfied, at least in your job, and want to change. And if it's not to excel your career, it's just to do something different. And with this difference, again, you're purging routines in your day, and even more so than taking up a new hobby, in that you need to get up at a different time. But it's going to be so exciting because you're going to be learning something new. It's not like you're going to the office and, hammering your stamp on procedures that you've been used to for a decade, but you're going to learn something entirely new. And life is really about that. That was, for me, I think, one of the most motivating things in the lives that I've lived, is every new life or phase of life, because at the end of the day, it wasn't a new life. I just like to call it that because there's such radical changes in there. But in these life phases, it was like, okay, you're starting new, you're starting to learn something new, and you get to apply this knowledge within a breathtaking amount of time. And that's so cool and only achievable by passion. But with this passion that you develop for something, you're also going to be purging the routines that I just mentioned, which lead to the fact that your life gets faster. It's a difficult decision to make, I know, but if you're at a stage where you're unsatisfied, what's worse than being unsatisfied? There is nothing. And if you move on in your career into a new phase of life, consider a new job. And I'm not talking a new employer, I'm talking about a new job altogether. And this transition, this learning period, will slow down your life so incredibly much that I think it's going to be much more rewarding than spending another 25, 30 years inside a work environment where you're unsatisfied with the entire situation. Your colleagues are shitty because you've heard all of their stories over and over again. You know where they go on vacation, they're scoring in golf, and everything about them, really. Often more than you know about your spouse. And that's just boring. And with a new phase of life, with a new job, then all of these things disappear. New people, new stuff to learn, and just an entirely decelerated life because you're experiencing so much more. In that sense, I hope I was able to motivate you to a degree was able to teach you, why life is getting faster and faster day by day, and how you can break that vicious cycle. In that sense, I hope you've had a good time. I hope you've had a good day. I hope if you are west of me that you have a good day in front of you and a very successful one. Let me know your feedback and your comments and your critique at the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. And I look forward to being back in touch with you tomorrow. Take care.